Your Holiness, dear guests, my name is Gabo Karsai. I'm a Managing Director of Mind and Life Europe. And it's a real privilege for us to have this opportunity to spend time with Your Holiness, to have a discussion on dialogue for a better world, remembering our friend, Francisco Varela. I would also like to greet all friends here, members and friends of the Mind and Life family in Europe, in the US, and globally. Thank you all for joining. And I would like to welcome everybody who is following us live on YouTube or any other platform. It was 20 years ago, on May 28th, 2001, when our dear friend, co-founder of Mind and Life, Francisco Varela, passed away. Mind and Life Europe is paying tribute to him this year with a number of events, including the webinar series Francisco and Friends, an embodiment of relationship that we are starting today with this meeting. We know that Your Holiness developed and maintained a very special relationship with Francisco Varela, leading to the creation of Mind and Life. Today, we would like to invite you to remember him and the great work you initiated together. Our panelists in the discussion with Your Holiness are Amy Cohen Varela, a clinical psychologist, chair of the board at Mind and Life Europe, Pier Luigi, professor emeritus of biochemistry at the Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, Elena Antonova, a senior lecturer in psychology at Brunel University, London, and Thupten Jimpala, Your Holiness principal English translator, chair of the board at Mind and Life Institute. We will have 6 main questions today, but before starting our discussion with Luigi, we would like to show Your Holiness some photos from the meetings you had with Francisco Varela and all other friends. Let's remember those days together. Thank you for taking the time to look at these photos and great memories. And now I would like to invite Luigi to start the discussion with you, Your Holiness.
I guess to unmute.
Luigi, please unmute yourself. Luigi, please unmute yourself.
Sound.
Yes, Luigi, please.
Okay, do you hear me now?
That's
yes.
Wonderful.
I was saying that I had the privilege to be present at a meeting in 1983 in Alpbach, Austria, where you and Francisco Varela met for the first time. It was a great meeting, probably the first in the world on science and spirituality. great atmosphere of love and friendship among all participants. And in this atmosphere of friendship, we notice, we admire the flourishing of a new friendship, the one between you and Francisco Varela, a friendship which was very beneficial to all of us. But from this, the first question, what was that made this friendship? What was that attract you to have this profound relation with a young scientist who at that time was not even very famous in the world? So why this friendship? What is the origin of that?
Since I was a very, very young age, childhood, I have interest about mechanic, and then I have one sort of small movie projector, which belongs to 13th Dalai Lama. So I develop curiosity. There are small battery in the movie projector. So how to produce electricity? Some small motor moving, then light. Also the electricity come. So I develop some sort of interest. Electricity, you see, what is the nature of electricity? And then the certain sort of material moving, then electricity develop. So I have some keen interest. Meantime, of course, from childhood, I study Buddhist philosophy. So then when I met Varela, he, one way, he is a scientist. But at the same time, he also sort of showing his deep interest about Buddhism. So often he mentioned when we discuss when a subject about Buddhism, then he say, now I have the Buddhist cap, then say something about Buddhism, Buddhist philosophy. Then he say, now cap of scientist. Yes. Then he mentioned about science. So I noticed that person is something really I need, who have some knowledge or interest about Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist Dharma, at the same time profession as a scientist. So then I also, you see, I think eventually I also, you see, pattern his, also the way when I speak about Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist logic, Buddhist cap. Then about science, particularly the mental science, science of mind, particularly emotion. Then my head, Buddhist head, more thicker. So my lifetime, he, one of the person who really very much impressed me, and I always remember him. So this picture always in my room, I always keep this picture. So then, as a Buddhist, we believe life after life, because you see, there is a logical approach. Every phenomena which moving, changing, there must be causes. So this physical naturally causes. Then with this brain alone is not so much sophisticated. I think our mind, human mind, is very, very sophisticated. We can think, we can meditate, we can change through sort of also the meditation, change our mind, and through that way, it brings really inner peace. So now eventually I develop also the meeting with a lot of scientists. When we talk, it seems science from West, Western world, religion is Christianity mainly, and some extent Islam and Judaism, but not much talk about human mind, about human emotion. In order to tackle our emotion, we should have fuller knowledge about the whole system of emotion or mind. So now, as you see, late Varela, you see, showed me science and Buddhist faith can go side by side. So I follow the pattern of late Varela. So we believe life after life. I'm quite sure Varela's next life, I'm quite sure among some of my close friends, family, I'm quite sure. So whether he can recognize me or there's some mentally, some close feeling must be there because of past lives sort of experience. Since my own case, when I was very young, 2-3 years old, some people who working with 13th Dalai Lama, when they come, I recognize. So we are same human being. of course, some karmic link, and some, I think, the mental ability. There are some differences. Otherwise, we are same human being, same sentient being. Within sentient being, we are same human being. Then, as Varela believe, you see Dharma. So, life after life, definitely some connection. And since within this life, we develop some special, connection. So I'm quite sure. Perhaps within, if I remain another 10, 20 years, I may meet one child who express something special about Varela. Possible. So like that. So today I very, very happy and proud to discuss something about my long-time old friend. And with the Varela's wife, yeah. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Your Holiness.
Thank you. The subject, Kasa, dialogue for a better world. This subject, very essential, very important. Now today's world, in spite many material development, but material development, including weapon, you see, too much emphasis, my nation, my country. So today, many leaders, you see, very much thinking about their own nation. So when another human group showing some different views or different attitude, then we easily call them our enemy. Among the scientists, genuine scientists, they mainly concern about a human being, not my nation or my religious group, like Varela. So therefore, now today, world, in spite of many material development, but mentally, emotionally, is too much thinking. We, I. That creates, my friend, my enemy. So, you see, we too much emphasis, emotional level, we and they. This thinking, broadly speaking, we can change that. One of my commitment is oneness of 7 billion human beings. We all same human being. And practically also, we have to live together on this small planet. And then economy, also now global economy. There's no national boundary. The East depends West. Northern world depends Southern world. That's now reality. We have to live together. Our economy is the interdependent. In economy field, you cannot sort of count national basis. Then, on top of that, now climate condition. Now global level, climate becoming warmer. So these, give us some kind of pressure. Now we have to work together. Not talking my nation, their nation. We must talk oneness of 7 billion human beings. Then a lot of, in previous century, and the beginning of this century, too many sort of violence on the basis of nation, my nation. I often use mentioning, look, European Union, France, German. You see, First World War, Second World War, really arch enemy. But after Second World War, then under the leadership of Adenauer, de Gaulle, they realized now no use. We kill each other. We have to work together. So mainly these, as far as I know, mainly these two persons initiated European Union. So since the European Union developed, no longer any killing among the member states. So at one continent, see, in 2 centuries, killing, fighting. Now, under new circumstances, now they develop union. So why not we, eventually, the whole world, or some kind of union, or instead of saying my nation, but rather we. So that's my own commitment. And there is no other choice. I become refugee. So, you see, I live in India. You see, no longer my nation. But India, of course, through century, we have some special connection. So I always consider India, we have a special connection. In any way, our neighbor country. All our knowledge, much knowledge come from India. So therefore, feeling we are same. With this feeling, in India also, you see, I feel this is ancient our home. All, philosophical knowledge, these things come from India. So therefore, the feeling of oneness is really gives me comfortable. And also, you see, wherever I go, different country, different continent, I always carrying with the feeling, same human being. So wherever I go, I always smile. I feel same human brothers, sisters. So according to my own experience, you see, the concept of oneness of same human being of this planet really gives you inner peace. No longer fear, no longer distrust. Religion is also the second level. Whether believe religion or not. Within religion, believe in this religion, that religion, still religion of human being. So we should emphasize oneness of 7 billion human beings. So now my commitment, number one commitment is promotion of concept of oneness of 7 billion human beings. The second commitment is all religion, in spite of different philosophy, different belief, all carry same message of loving kindness. So they use different philosophy, different concepts in order to keep compassionate feeling. So all religion, different philosophy, the same purpose to develop firm conviction about warm-heartedness, like that. Then my another commitment is ecology. Within my own lifetime, or in Tibet, the older generation, you see, they say when they were young, during winter, those higher mountains around Lhasa, a lot of snow. Then, decade by decade, you see, reduce. So now, the climate things are changing. Now we must think oneness of human being. And Tibet case, source of water, almost whole Asia, those big river, Yangtze River, or Mekong River, or Brahmaputra, all these major rivers, which several billions life depend on this water. So now climate change really very serious. Now we have to think. The Tibet case is we have to try to keep Tibetan ecology for water sources of almost whole Asia, like that. So now, okay. Now, next question. Now, some questions, yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Your Holiness. Francisco Varela and Your Holiness started Mind and Life with the great help of our good friend Adam Engel. You organized and participated in so many dialogues being a principle for creating a sense of oneness between human beings. And these dialogues that you started with Varela and Engel created a whole new field of research. My question is, given all of your responsibilities, why have you decided to spend so much time over many years, 5 days a week, sitting with scientists and scholars? And what benefits do you think that this work has brought to the world?
zede chimbori de and tadu tanda tseri ba nyamboli ya dolen na ye ki di tuze shu chimbo na yores pena cha sha ba nan dolen na be kal ya dunda jig na la nyima ngai ringal ya tseri ba da du nyambo ma shu shu den ja je and dolen nang ba yin za di kundun zede chimbo de yugu le tseri ba nyamboli tuzu mong bu de ta na ye ki 공부 가와시 얘기나서 안에 단연디 낭바다 체리 송제게 돈에 안에 냠루 간다직 돌랭다 되게 돈에 레구 빼버디기 지다 도미 되는 톨이야 펜도 가르치면서
다 Firstly, I am Buddhist. My daily sort of practice is thinking all sentient beings' happiness. The other game, Melam Jaya, Ninda Rish Melam Jaya, the Chisi Nanga Nebatang, draw Chisi Najuba, Tisi Dan Najune, Dredung and Sour Shots at the Ninda Rish Melam Judi. And it's in D or the Chavina, Sason John, Chambotan Nagashin to Tagoya. 심지어 빡도 매봐 남아 일주 신양 쇼스니 어떻게 답하면은 되게 저들이 저들이 인도산에 다 카요라요기 아니 나 미치기 지 그새 투두기 저불이 질이야 지 판도 영향이 지 현대로 추주질에 매네 지다 현대 접토나 사무지
So on my day-to-day basis, one of my daily practices involve saying some aspirational prayers, and one of my most favorite prayer is the one by Shantideva, which reads, some of you are familiar: as long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, may I too remain and help dispel the sufferings of the world. And similarly, Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, where he talks about making an aspirational prayer that may I be like the great elements of the natural world, so that the sentient beings can partake and derive benefit from my existence. So this is the kind of prayers that I do. So on my part, on a day-to-day basis, one of the things that I always think about is, in my own way, in humble way, whatever help I can bring to the world for the sentient beings, I should devote my life to that.
Oh, the traditional 기규에서 간일이 지 냠는지야 조대 자신 주주 장주섬 동리도 장주섬데 아니 냠는 조지세 되네 사무도주기 동리가 거대 조지세 되네 장주섬 거리야 알랍진 주주셔야 되기 당신 냠지 장주섬 거미야디 아니 조지되기 제사가 안되디 시월에 안데 디 주주나래야 다들 생기 동에다 양다 저거 마셔나 상계유도 민주주의 코어나야 대화매 대외경의 군세의 장주섬께 따셨네 내내 대화를 줘라 숨시 수시 기록률 다디 독서하는 셰베이나 가서 지진 동에 지이고 대그 랑된 돌려줘 지진 대화 지이고 대그 현된 돌려줘 선이 송이고도 자 다드신 동에다 양다 저걸 마셔나 상계유도 민주주의 코어나야 대화 매 세대 템버 땡겨르셔 저불이 디가 욕도 삼아 nga sene ene nga tos ba kya chir chene ene nge gekhup ene da nge mema sa ti in yok de yong do da di de pet khal pa sha ne ga da michikyu 야 심지어 탐제 사모도 나에 미치규 저물이 디가 님도 속국이 뭐 디도 삼다네 간다 끈을 그렇게 팬드 줘야지 삼다데 쉬우지 계속 부르셔
So in my own daily practice, given that Thupten Jinpa is here, I'll speak a few words in Tibetan. In my own daily practice, some of the key elements that I emphasize, one of which is cultivation of awakening mind, which is part of what is called the vast practice. Then the other one is the profound view coming from the Nagarjuna's teachings. And in the bodhicitta, the awakening mind practice, one of the elements aspects that I really emphasize is the transmission coming from Shantideva, the teaching coming from Shantideva, which involves equalizing and exchanging of self and others, where you really cultivate an attitude of caring for others' well-being. And Shantideva says that, if one is not able to switch the perception of self and others and be concerned about others' well-being, and let alone attainment of Buddhahood, even in this life, there will be no real joy, no real happiness. And then he goes on to say that, therefore, by riding the sort of the horse of bodhicitta, awakening mind, someone can travel from a place of joy to joy. What intelligent, wise person would not want to embark on such a journey? So on the opposite side, he goes on to say that if you look at all the miseries in the world, sufferings in the world, they're all rooted in self-centered attitude. And all the happiness that are in the world really are rooted in altruistic aspirations and intention. And this really seems to be really true, because if you think about all the problems that we see in the world, a lot of them are rooted in self-centeredness, starting from big I and me. And then as you expand that, it becomes my country and my people. And this me and mine is really what creates all that division, and division then creates the conflicts. So at this point in our history of humanity, let us keep aside the possibility of caring for all sentient beings, but at least we should be able to develop an attitude that would include in our identity all human beings, thinking in terms of we the human being. And in this way, once we're able to develop that kind of affinity with our fellow human beings and think in more collective terms of us as human species, human beings, then we will be able to really change the way we behave and change the way we think, and also begin to really avoid harming others.
Thank you, Your Holiness.
Oh, yeah.
What an inspiring vision. I think Elena has a question.
Your Holiness, as you mentioned, Francisco Varela was very interested in Buddhism, not only as a method for disciplined self-inquiry, but as a way of enriching our scientific understanding of the mind. And as Amy noted, the dialogues between science and first-person experience that both Your Holiness and Francisco Varela gave so much time to have created the new field of contemplative science. My question is, Your Holiness, have these dialogues with science affected your own thinking and possibly your Buddhist practice? And if so, how?
As I briefly mentioned, since my childhood, I have some keen interest about science, technology. Now, eventually I reach India, number of occasions meeting with scientists. And then it become quite clear. Modern scientists, their knowledge about human emotion very little. Human mind, very little. So therefore, even, the emotion, the word emotion, the simply one word, emotion. According Buddhist sort of, also the psychology or Buddhist sort of text about mind, emotion, then Luigi nala simjung of justice, Gudunga, Yunginga, Gawajuji, Sanyu, Yin Yushen, she said to take Yimji, which time do I? So, emotions, and think the Toto chicken, but or cut came to go. Chasagata, Chasaga, not under some common ripper. Me not a song at the emotion change. So that emotion or chicky, not so you told chicky, shitty on ya chicky, emotion on alia, Nihala, some common ripper to down the chicky, shamba, cheche. Anything, the not song eggy, sim to tell, Yamuka just tango yewa. Or chicky pando yetting eggy, chamba the ingita, sad to say, but ya conjust go yemi. And go tapsi shash to go. Melum tip chico member che. Nang bench di easy your guardi in a easy di shirul danding and chigi, gudua. Or shirugi, munchiche, trochen, teton any easily achi. So the she pleasure changes the temporary and low to hours too. The cash of do.
So one of the things is that, for example, when you converse with Western scientists, contemporary scientists, we all agree that, emotion is very important because emotion is often the source of a lot of our problems. But then the word emotion seems to conjure this somewhat monolithic entity. But compared to that, if you look at the Buddhist equivalent of psychology, such as Abhidharma, then there's a much more kind of, granular description of our experience. For example, in the Abhidharma taxonomy, one of the taxonomy lists 51 such mental factors. And within the 51, among the 51, there are separate categories. For example, the 5 factors that are omnipresent to every experience and so on and so forth, including categories that are, more afflictive in nature. So, we can see there's a much more granular, sort of more detailed understanding of our experience. And this, I think, is very important because we all agree that emotion is often a source of our problem. And within emotion, if we are to seek techniques to regulate and deal with our emotions, then we need to ground that approach in a deeper, fine understanding of the world of emotion as we experience them. And within emotion, there are certain types of emotions which are more afflictive in their nature, which are more destructive as they arise. And then what are their antidotes? How can we apply those antidotes? Similarly, within the world of emotion, there are more constructive ones, such as loving kindness, compassion, and so on and so forth. Then we can ask the question, what is their nature? How can we cultivate them and enhance them? So in this way, I think we can make some progress through the conversation and collaboration. And in Buddhism, for example, even though as a spiritual path, there is a role for faith, an important role for faith. But in Buddhism, a faith needs to be grounded in understanding. So wisdom has to underpin the faith. So if one's conviction that arises in the Dharma has to be grounded in understanding and wisdom. So this is one of the reasons why I often say that the approach in Buddhism, the general approach, is actually quite similar to the way in which a scientist would approach a problem or a topic.
제가 가다 거기 내줄이야. 지금 수구 처된다. 지금 쿨유도 즉 저희들다 사이언스 판에 즉 가서다 벤저 이야기하다 즉 쿨유 이야기하다 뭔지 사이언스 판에 그 연구 여러 봐 뒤고도 가 다되네 다 자자야 투유도잖아요 아니 심 기부기디가나다 저여 보다 성고부 이야기도한테 심을 뒤지 중로 삼네 가당에 루비 최전다 텔레테네 심 기부 중로 삼니다 미유도 들봐 다 심코라 수도 깐네 아니 남도 드라마다 이모션 드라마다 여버도 저기 14구 털 임지다네 아니 변화 공주도 심 주겐데도 공주라도 와 서다 공주디 너는 겨니 공주 쉬어 주시를 뭐임버 다 공주 견상으로 것도 서 상다나 그 시켜야지 다 참지 연대디도 상다나 아니 그 잠들는 거는 전에다 심기 시지상도 마서 루비 최전의 편용에 공주 심 주어서도 마서 리베리베기 수구의 마대 차용이지. 사실은 인도 다 가다가는 참말로 저기 디긴등의 시다리. 저다 심지어 들주소는 지하게요 말이. 다 밀이야 삼로 당야지 예외 인도선다 삼로탄에 저기 내 저기서 디스되기요. 아니 삼로탄에 하이신사 아니 루비 하이진 다조 생그 하이진디 최다 중서的야가기 폐질 다 야가 리슈네리 ahimsa 아니 거루나사디 야가로 다 로션 또 som동스 권에 다디 두가 저상가 다디 낭외쉐디 디네바 야로 깨네 아니 다기로야기 저 삼당 잡아셔야지 개셔부 송이고인도 전에 다 저기 시철도 남지기 싫어고 타네 애니 생기 시디요야 다들 주인구도 자상가 자상 다 베라라고 소야들이 다 디기 되면 저물지 저거 주나 최저고 타네 생기 시디자야지다 천리기 토안에 지 가서르다 루비 최전
So if we look at our human aspirations, we all aspire for a good health, and science has clearly been very important in that regard. Science has given us amazing knowledge about the human body and health, and also science has also given us extensive knowledge about the physical world that we live in, and the relationship between our human life and the physical environment, and so on and so forth. So the experience of happiness that we seek at the level of body experience, to a large extent, science is able to fulfill it. But if you look deeper into human aspirations, our aspirations are really, not just about physical well-being or economic prosperity, but actually as human beings, we aspire for happiness, we aspire for peace, we aspire for a genuine joy. And those really needs to come from the mind itself. It is really something that can only arise, by taking care of our mind. And just as we briefly talked about how emotion is often the source of problem, but also the solution to the problem of emotion, sadness, unhappiness, really lies also within the human mind itself. And that techniques, that solution would require a deep understanding of how the mind works. And having a fine, sort of differentiation at the level of the mind. For example, let's take anger as an example. Anger is often a source of problem for many of us. But anger, we cannot wish it away. by praying, may anger do not arise in me. Anger can only be tackled by looking at the nature of anger. What are the triggers for anger for me? What are the causes and conditions? And how does it arise? And then also reflecting upon its, destructive consequences. If I do not, regulate my anger, what are the consequences it lead to? And in this way, we begin to have something in the form of a kind of an antidote against anger. Similarly, on the positive side, we admire loving kindness, compassion, and so forth. And these also, we cannot simply wish that they arise in us. We need to cultivate them. And also part of the cultivation would involve, contemplating deeply on the value and the benefits of these constructive emotions in us, how something like loving kindness and compassion opens our heart, lays a foundation for a healthy relationship, and how that promotes not just a peace of mind and joy, but also even a physical health. On the contrary, we know anger can also undermine our physical health. So learning in these ways, would involve having a deep self-inquiry and understanding of our own mind through a kind of a first-person approach. So here, I really agree with Varela, because in the end, a genuine happiness, a true joy is going to be a function of wisdom, that is derived from understanding one's own mind and its working. So Varela often talks about how if we are to truly create a world where human beings are happy, it needs to combine both science and spiritual, approach. And this, I think, is true.
랍제 롭종 나리아 최께지 견나면체 지 부구 변화 지 리고 야고 용야 지 전부 땜부치는 영야성은 주제디 정다전의 영야 여러보다 지 최근에 지금 별로 지 송화 차야사도 주께서 멤버체 코라 지 롭정다전이 지 가다 셈 그게 싫어 차와 싫어 싸워 싫어 누워 싫어 서서사들 그 로정다전의 영야지 또가 어디 주제디 코라 거상하죠 그래서 믹스 믹스 최다 만지지 고가다 상루 정다 장장 미유다 민디지 가다 로정야지 최께서다 여침에 과들이 매비체 가다 쓰다가 니리신도 미 레바직 정신이 예더보다디 지기 싫어 차와 싸워 누워 싸워 사주제 정다전이 와도가 지상 가서 랍전 안에 지금 배기 지 드즈제디 지 에카데믹 디자인을 샤네 지금 로존 제가 좀 나왔어 하다가 안다 다다 내염디 바 춘다로 최세 디종나 딜리아 다 유니버시티 저기 프로페서들 또 지금 또 스투체 그래서 구두셔고 상황이 정규열이 그래서 자가게 너르기 지금 생각을 리포던 저래 다 싫어 차와 싸워 누워 싸워 들어야 거라 아니 지금 에카데미라고 하네 도스 구두셔도나 상네 전대기여다.
So one of my really interest is really not so much to promote, spirituality as a religious teaching, but really to see if we can bring it in a more secular format, particularly in the education field. Because we know from personal experience and also in contemporary secular education systems, we know, children go through education. We know children can train their brain, develop their intellectual capacity, even, strengthen their memory capacity to, memorize a lot of stuff and so forth. So a lot of these are already being done. But in the Indian tradition, ancient Indian tradition, there are also quite a lot of emphasis on the training of the mind. For example, in the Indian and Tibetan tradition, we speak of different aspects or forms of intelligence. So there is the swift intelligence, where some people are able to think through very fast. Then there is a penetrating intelligence, where people are able to go through deep into into a topic, deep inquiry. And there is also what is known as the vast intelligence, where one is able to approach a topic in a much more horizontal way, in a comprehensive approach. So there are mental training which really help us enhance these different aspects of our intellect. So and these have nothing to do with the religion, and so clearly these are secular, universal forms of education, and Indian tradition is very rich in this regard. So one of my hope is, and also we know that as human beings, because of the special brain that we have natural capacities for many of these, but those can be enhanced through training. So one of the hopes that I have is that once our world begins to come out of the current pandemic situation, one hope that I have is to spend some time in Delhi, New Delhi, where I will have the opportunity to sit down with quite a lot of professors from different universities, and really sort of focus on this question of how can we tap into the ancient Indian knowledge tradition and extract aspects of their mental training that can help enhance these aspects that we are talking about, and which can then be brought in a more secular format in the education for the younger generation itself. Yeah.
To next question.
Next question.
Your Holiness, somehow related to the question of mind is the interest of Francisco Varela to bring the personal experience of the scientist into the picture and understanding of science itself. And I believe it is interesting that some aspects of modern science, like quantum mechanics, for example, shows in a very dramatic way how important is the action and mind of the experimentalist scientist into the so-called results. And this kind of personal influence, was felt very much in all our mind and life dialogues. And certainly science has expanded a lot. And the question that I would like to ask you, as science expands, also our questions, increase. Is there any particular science questions that you would like to see answered fully by scientists in the next time? Is there something that you really would like in terms of science to be explained? I don't know, consciousness or anything more practical.
Ada dirisha Quran tada tserilia da tande chalia gyuwachimbu dode droshimbar was. Ne lakpar tanda tseri da tanda kunduyun da nangba sungzhe ga tone, dolena be tone, tseri rangi tanda semda tuzu kola jebachitanga tole, goda masune cheru chinje, gyuwadro yores. Tanda de gongba sheje, tanda tseri ga tone, da kunduyun gu gongba shedan tone chebena, tiwa di 체리고토네 제바 체토나 삼삼들에게 태원내 채웠던데 툴을 개요나스 체리고토네 태워디토래 제바 체토나 세 툴을 레웠던데 가려요나스
대별로 주라하셔지는이야 그 체리고 념도리야 저와시라 체니 디프게 가수를 남주로 세월로 가르도스러나 체리스럽디 치료 응고부지 안자를 미기되지 마도 변을 리뷰고 차샤나 레바다 디즈트에는 시부지 14고 냠시비체 지금서 리서치 제대기 요리 다 간다 레벨을 땡땡이 쉐바 또고 수진시 말와 그 냠용 톤에 쉐야지 마도 또 레바 수진시 디 자주 전에 그 쉐변로다 쉐도야 가고 자리 자들이 인도 생리배 다 지가다 수진기 최지 강도 상당 체대야지 다들 자가 너럽네 지금 샘컴을 리버지 이해되었다디 시부지고 나가셔 버려셔 자 레벨 로스 시버지 이해되었지 다디 레벨이야 그게 숙진 땡에 직 두가다 민가다나 마다네 다디 만족다 샘사드 저기요 그래서 딱고 즉 14호 탈이야 또 잡아채네 자 저불링기 시디네리 소스 리뷰 트레이딩이네리 샘그 시디네리 디디 또 지금 샘컴 리뷰 콜도 상단에 샘기다 시시트에 차디리 바 야르게 동야다 샘 모두에 차디리 그 샘랑게 때문에 또 경제 상단에 바 쇼충을 동야지 다디 시우지 계셔 버리셔 디 최께서 깨워 것이 계셔 말이 최께서 말이 그 최도 말아서 샘을 시디 컨트스 고도가 김상의 시디 컨트스 고도가 엔 지소 나라로 시디 컨트스 고도가 다디 아주 롭쟁 나라네 롭둬야지 메디케이션 시던 거래
So as a result of several decades of my dialogue with scientists, one impression that I got from these dialogues is that contemporary modern science, Western science, as it stands, is heavily oriented towards kind of a material vision of the world. In fact, the whole field of study, the object of study, and inquiry is really modeled on material objects, material phenomena, including even when we talk about human experience, brain is the main, object of study, and the activity of the brain, the chemistry of the brain. So it's all about the brain, and there is hardly any attempt to really understand what is supported by the brain, which is the experience part of it, which is, whether we call it consciousness, mind, or, and the interesting thing about that phenomenon is that actually, if you don't take into account the subjectivity, the subjective dimension of the felt experience of consciousness, looking at the brain alone, which is the basis of that experience, I don't think is going to give us a full picture. So because our scientific paradigm and the entire approach will be still confined within a material paradigm, which is always, kind of presupposes some kind of measurability, observation from outside, all of this. And it will leave out what is the unique characteristic of consciousness or mind, which is the felt subjective dimension. So I think here the science as it stands now doesn't seem to have a way of approaching this. And here I feel the ancient Indian tradition, which has a very rich mind science, and a large part of that description is really from the subjective, taking into account the subjective dimension, I think can contribute. So my hope is that gradually science will be able to get a handle, because we're not talking about rebirth, we're not talking about religion, religious ideal, religious belief. We're essentially talking about our everyday experience of all human beings. All human beings wish to have a peace of mind. We seek joy, and including, when we think about the, joy or global peace, or individual personal peace, or peace and happiness at the family level or the society level, ultimately all boils down to a state of mind. Whether the state of mind is disturbed, dominated by negative emotions, which leads to all sorts of problems, or whether the state of mind is peaceful, calm, and compassionate, which then give rise to another set of consequences. So it all hangs on really the state of mind of society, human beings, individuals. So my hope is that, eventually science will be able to really tackle that and find a way to not only explain, but also show, come up with some programs in the schools where children, it will become part of the normal education, where children learn skills about cultivating peace in their mind, happiness, compassion, and these qualities, which are really important for human life. So that's my wish and my hope.
Next question.
Your Holiness embodies a delicate balance of analytical and contemplative approach to the first-person inquiry into the nature of mind. And as Your Holiness recounted, Francisco Varela, too, wore both hats and very comfortably. Young scientists who are interested in contemplative science often find it challenging to combine the analytical method and contemplative experience without a conflict, both professionally and personally. My question is, would Your Holiness have any advice for the young scientists on how they can use their analytical skills and also open themselves up to contemplative experience?
Dirisha tanda tseriba tanda kunjunga nambana shingi tanda Varela ke jik nangcho go nyamlen ta tseri sungde tone bisike na yorwa tina shin tanda tseriba tanda shoba mangpuchi de rewa chigi yorte na kuranzu tseri gi jebe tablamla ya rigbe jeba che ta che je ta shib chabu jeba che de kechim shu chagu digala Dita yang gom jabje loma ling jaje and gom jabje gom ge nyamnyong ta kuni ji sungje tone jige jile mene ba da jige jile magewa sungje ge tone tablam karayo nas tabshirbuchi tseribu shombuzo chetuye tseribaye che ya nangcho nyamnen jinyeje chetuye che chone shebe
저는 tseribu the emotion yorwata 제사가 그 셈기 지 시디 천리부식이네 셈기 시디 고요로 제사가 다 리뷰 트레이딩 거리야다 천리부도 타네 할레시기요리 다 셈기 시디 거리시디 또고 내가 셈기 나다로 셰브셰셰 되네 이도 우스타 가서 셈기 시디 주야지 가다 내한테 데벨로티 되게 로나시리 데벨로티 나로리아 체집에 나네 지금 심그 시디 콜게 시디 신에 더 심그 트레이딩 콜이야 돈하생에도 망도 로되기도 와 자상가 다 세상고 또 나가르샤 수규 트레이딩 지고 멤버십 심기 시디 컨트 소거스럽나 다 디간이야 그 레고도 와 내가 심기 되게 세야지 심기 시디 주변에 가르쳐도 와 시디 영향의 교로 조카도가 배다 준주네 디송야래 소소이네 소 용조성의 그 자오디 배 서버고미야기 애니 땡 초리스 디지인도 자오디 랑게 계신이 레스네 승부도가 산 남중아서 자오스로 배 지금 섬다 연구를 지금 하는 때에 배 낙선 내서 상황 기기여와 다 자오디 서버고베 땡리 소소 계신이 있다고 그랬으네 독스로 인도잖아요 삼로 남상 지금 유것이 되게도 와.
So the simple fact is, scientists are also human beings like all of us. And just as all of us, scientists also have problems of emotion. As human beings, scientists also wish for finding a peace in their mind. So I think, one thing that would be important for the scientist is to really just pay attention to the important need of finding an inner peace. And the inner peace really needs to be cultivated. And part of that would involve a self-inquiry and getting some kind of experiential understanding of your own mind. So I think those are probably the ways in which, one could say that the analytic approach and the more contemplative approach can come together, because the contemplative approach helps the analytic approach, and also the analytic approach also help contemplative approach as well. And maybe this is the reason why, over the years, as our dialogues kind of continue, we are beginning to see more and more scientists actually taking serious professional interest in the whole question of mental well-being, and also mind-based approach to cultivating mental well-being. So this is a consequence of these kind of dialogues, where there is an appreciation of the need for some kind of mind-based approach. And part of that is really a self-inquiry. For example, as I said earlier, if anger is a problem that disturbs our peace of mind, then through a self-inquiry, we look at the nature of anger. How does it arise? What are the triggers for me? And then find a way to approach it. And then also use important, for example, like Shantideva uses, important shifts in our perspective. For example, in one of his chapters in Guide to the Bodhisattva Way, he talks about, in dealing with our strong negative emotion towards our, what we call anger, enemy or adversary, he actually says that from the point of view of cultivating patience, anger is your best teacher. So instead of feeling resentful, you should feel grateful towards your enemy, giving you the opportunity to practice patience. So when you think about it, it really shifts, turns your normal attitude and perspective upside down. And that kind of jolts your mind, and it opens up a new way of seeing, the other person. So it is in these ways, actually, a real change can take inside ourselves.
In today, 패시 다디 샤서데 낭배중니 시기열이 다음에 다와서 기시티. 서당아서 공주스르잖아. 나사 숙심스리기도 가. 차다로 가르치도 나사 숙심스리기도 가. 다 될래야 오머리지 차나 소나지. 풍불 말에 가서 기부섬이 추모이 매매 룸에 난가매 남신마이 꾸면은 테레셔나 기부 강사 드스차게 딱세 셔인데 다 나사고 주주신 매도지 차인 것도 와. 제사가 된저기 다 산제베 슝근하네 에네 차단기 집게 댄서로 조시대 나사고 간 주의의 인도산에 나사야디 가와도 자주셔니 에네 디 자오시름 나라 요리 풍부 레셈이 텔러 때문에 ter되면 디시고 풍되면 디시고 컨신 인사시 내가 남주다 와티 럽되기 다디 디시셔서 라로 수준이 풍부 레셈이 텔러 때문에 ter되면 다시 자와 풍되면 다시 자와 컨신 인사 또 상당연도 나사고 직배 쉬우지게 그게 차오로 직지디 이거 조주스 매도 저도와 제사가 나이자 나이 년사들이 야 언지 숙소부여는 그야 디 견시행도와 와다 차당기 는 견다 니미디디 상로스다 어디 차당 강을 댄사 나사야콜레 독스타셔는 인도잖아요 아니 그 녀몽도 저되고 즉 시서 때문에 매등의 지기 뒤차용도 와 근데 주로도 남지기 싫어 배 개셔버리셔 아다 관점 페시스터네 지 자오사 그게 배랑성을 시도 샤용기어데 디야마리스 바 딱든잖아 민대 샤성리사디 내가 뭐셔베 관점 페시스는 가셔기 나한테 럼용 저상가도 오메 리베터네 자더니 다스 고파도 세윤데 그 지금 아테 ዝ부터 기하면 기서면 되지 자용도 어디지.
So another aspect of this kind of inquiry also should involve, although the teaching is coming from Buddhist sources, I'm talking about the teaching on emptiness. One of the important aspects of that inquiry needs to involve a willingness to deeply question what is it that when I think of I and me, am I referring to? What is that I and me, which we feel so strongly? Because when we feel strong emotions such as anger or attachment, it is, premised upon an assumption of there being a real me for whose sake you are reacting emotionally. So in the Buddhist text, for example, in Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, he actually suggests that we go through a self-inquiry that involves, probing deeply into each of the constitutive elements that make up our existence, in terms of the 6 elements and so on and so forth, and then ask which one is the real me. And once you, dissect in this way and rule out each and every single candidate, then you get to a point where there is no such thing as me. And similarly, in Nagarjuna's treatise on the Middle Way, in one of the chapters, he uses the same analysis in deconstructing the concept of the Buddha, the Tathagata. But we can use that to refer to ourselves and analyze the relationship between, ourself and our body, mind, and the various other constitutive elements that make up our existence, and ask whether each one of them, is it the relationship, is it the combination, So when you do that, you get to a point where what we previously assumed to be really solid, real, undisputable, is not really there. We cannot find anything that we can point our finger and say, that is the real me. And, that is the true self. So once you do that, it really sort of opens up. And so what is needed is a two-pronged approach. One is looking at the negative emotions themselves, the afflictions such as attachment and anger, and contemplating their destructive consequences in this way, and then applying their specific antidotes. But at the same time, you should also, as part of that approach, do this inquiry into questioning the assumption underlying our strong negative emotions, which is this belief in a real solid me that is objectively there. And so in this way, we are kind of undermining the very basis upon which we ground our strong negative emotions. So I think so when you do this way, it really has an impact, opening up and also lessening the strong negative emotions that tends to dominate our reaction to situations.
가라 녀몽 릭디기 거다 취미 이제 남도 그 차되어지다 차되어지잖아요. 그도 시르 그다 레지서베 시르 그도 봐 짜요나 코스 지 가서고 시르하시마도 데 매드버지도 와. 다 탑지 차도 저기 야 리베 첸이 그딱 국가나 가서 이모션 다가 가네 랑진지 뇨르다 셴진지 숙셔다 셰도 저대야지 다 뇨모도 저기 다도 집에 게임도 전에 아니 다들 봐 잡아 셰인데 아니 근데 차당이 뇨모인데 가서 그게 총을 셰셰 미르비지도 수여이나 아니 저래 차단께서 나한테 가봐도 없으려나 그 가게 고프로 때 뭐도 가게 매들지 다 서비스 잘했다 와 애들 저거데 아스사가 제사스 뭐도 색깔께서 세합도 봐 제사가 되다 답변한다 가서 강신 거부디다 남자는 뒤에 다가선 걸 추르도 난이 뭐이 디시지된기 다녀더라 나버 재미졌어 뒤에 거서 그 강식 다더선에 겨워지면 뭐 이제 다녀도야 좀 취 겨워한 거 이번 요로스 또 오늘 매버버서 매버 말했어 뭐부터 뭐 소녀라서 뭐 서로잖아 마찬가지야 민스 지대된 소녀 소동을 쉐바테 옛날 뭐 기교다 디신 거부터 떠나야 돈이 다들 겨워요로스네 다 할레버서 저제 오면 슝기 잡아셔 저 할레버지 나도 인다를 삼당되기
So earlier I forgot something that His Holiness mentioned. He talked about how having conversations with some quantum physicists, the quantum physicists were also telling him that through understanding quantum mechanics and the logic behind it, it also makes it very difficult to assume an objective reality that is out there. And it seems to suggest that we could use a similar type of a deconstructive process so that, you know, the very basis upon which we ground our strong attitudes, like my enemy, my loved one, that strong attachment and strong, anger towards our enemy can be sort of, undermined by questioning the very assumption behind these negative emotions. So what this is pointing to is that if you look at many of the strong emotions that will cause us problem, a lot of these strong emotions are really they come up from a kind of a false projection of certain attributes to the person or to the object. So because the projection is false, by using the wisdom almost like a sword, you can, demolish the construct that we project onto the object. So this, I think, is true.
딩이 자신 세아들이 박회념 선고 우주규 타와 탄야도 버리고 째수도 타와 아니 탄야도 가사시고 전다 뭐 깨워 미히고 타와 아니 최선서 랑동도 숨고 메세고 타와서 디디도 제윤도 지 강아세하게 지금 은지로고 지 뱃 가서다 싸워로 가게 매듭지기 아니 다시우데 되기사들이 아니 은진기 태막하지 아니야 아스사가 하지 사시갈 아주 도되기도 가 디시우지 핑기도 또 상담한테 시우지 핑기.
So now I remember. So His Holiness was saying that imagine if you take your strong emotions like attachment and anger as an object of your opponent in a debate and ask them, say, where is this self for whose sake that you are being so strong, so emotional? Where is that? And then if you keep asking questions, at some point you can reveal to the strong emotions that there is no such thing as a self, that they have been grasping with such strong grip. And then the negative emotions would feel embarrassed, and they would say, maybe I was kidding. So, so we can see how, by using the logic of emptiness, we can actually, deeply question the assumptions behind many of these grasping that we have. And here, for example, in Chandrakirti's Entering the Middle Way, he offers a series of arguments which really challenges these deep assumptions to the point where we almost feel as if there is no such thing as self. Where am I? And then the question is, does that mean I do not exist? But then Chandrakirti goes on to say, it's not that we are non-existent, but our existence is only a function of dependent origination. So he's sort of, bringing both sort of a more realistic understanding of what we mean by existence, but also demonstrating the false aspects of the objective reality that we attribute. And so these, when we think along these lines, they are really, truly powerful in their impact on challenging many of the assumptions that often underpin our, strong emotions, which lead us to trouble.
And 우먼주의 책들이 nga roshus tegore tezalodu seye nawa sajane rangelala nebe gyuru rashin sisum deda malu dene kemebar tode tanye tembe dokin gogonros daton gobordo samden yimigi rogume balla nijang gebershi 대공 대시 숭기 상전 정전이 멀리 번호로 파버쳐 방인스 엔디 덤데 군수트니 쇼야가고 개교고 망보이고 되는 교 망보이 눈두다네 개로 그 슈도기 개연데 자수 파를 초던 로스 나디 로개요다 지도시 무식하지도 않게 러사리 지 고든 지도부지 토명에 삼배서시 those daddy.
So for example, there are two passages in Chandrakirti's Entering the Middle Way, which really gives me both hope as well as courage. And these two passages actually, in a form of a summary, shows how by cultivating insight into the nature of, reality, and including ourselves, as well as cultivating the conventional aspect of our everyday experience. And through the combination of the knowledge of these, both conventional truth and the ultimate truth, which he compares to the two wings of a bird, we will then be able to cruise across the space of reality and arrive at the destination, which is the attainment of full enlightenment. And so he's really pointing out the path to attaining true cessation, a true lasting peace. And these kind of passages give me both hope as well as courage as well.
Next question.
Your Holiness, I have a question about friendship and dialogue and change. Friendship and dialogue were very important to Varela and to Your Holiness. The many mind and life dialogues have demonstrated that communication across traditions and across cultures can be cultivated. The crises and issues we are facing today are so global that we must think and work together as a human collective. My question is, how can mind and life further promote a sense of common humanity, as well as the depth of interaction that is necessary for true connection and effective action?
말하면서 저분이 지용 시대전에 낭배 떨어뜨려지 양코라 수세 샤브리. 상당하죠. 지도대 내 딱 봤을 때 아들이 아주 미 통주 그래 통주 된지 비륜 된지 예대버디디 다 가당 아주 40시간 때되어래 다 아주 파텐 수지전에 초국이어래 이제 인도산에 아주 지기질을 축구 접대서 수제다 전에 수수께 되는 상담단에 전에 뭐래 세상에 전에기 가서 concept of oneness of human being and through that way peaceful world 다 되지 가지고다 그 뭐의 경쟁이 되는 상담도와 이 최계적의 멤버체 최명예집이 있나요? 다 뒤집어가 성님도 대고로다. 세상가 다 나한테 최신 축구전이 캐카를 해야 돼가. 이 3월로 정을 해야 돼. 세상 가서 3월로 미치교 두시도 안에 따님들이야 가게집이 전에 대하셔나 이 약속을 받아.
So here, when I talk about the oneness of humanity, I'm not specifically thinking about, from the Buddhist point of view. We are really thinking about the broader world. And here, my own approach and emphasis is really to bring out the practical need of the concept of oneness of humanity, reminding ourselves the fact that whether we like it or not, we are all sharing this one small planet. And also another important fact is that, our world that we are living in is truly interconnected, interdependent. So in this interdependent world, then, too much division based on strong us and strong them is really mutually not beneficial, mutually destructive. And no one really wins through this kind of strong division-based, being in the world, in this interconnected world. On the other hand, if we are willing to embrace this oneness of humanity, show affinity to people who are different from us, then we really have a chance to rise above the differences and also, create a world where both sides benefit. Both sides have a chance to live a more peaceful life. So this is the approach I use, and I think for the larger world, this is also a question of survival. Because survival depends upon people getting along with each other in this interconnected world. So that, emphasizing the practical nature and the urgent need is a more effective strategy.
And according theistic religion, you should all believe God, creator. So that's God truly our Father, who creates whole world, whole humanity. So from that viewpoint, we are children of same Father, God. So if we children from same Father, among the children, fighting or killing, how feel our Father? So God as a creator and our Father, see, all children of one God, if we live happily together, then Father feel happy. So from the theistic religious viewpoint, we should live friendly and harmoniously. So that's the best way to offer worship to God. So Muslim, either Muslim or Hindus or Christians or Judaism, and all believe one God. So we have to live together happily with sense of brotherhood, sisterhood, because we all came from one Father. Okay.
Thank you very much, Your Holiness. I'm going to pass the mic to Gabor Karsai now to sum up for us today.
Your Holiness, this was the last question. Thank you so much. And we could not end on a better note. Thank you so much for your wisdom, for your care, and for your friendship. A friendship can open up a lot of doors. Mind and Life was born from a friendship between Your Holiness and Francisco Varela and Adam Ango. A new field of study, a whole new field, contemplative science, was born from a friendship. So maybe a different world can be born from friendships too. And thank you so much for being a leading example of becoming our friends. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, I really hoping within my lifetime, the reincarnation of late Varela, I think I may meet. I really feel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Holiness.
Thank you, Your Holiness.
Thank you. Thank you.